Welcome everyone to this great webinar, the first one now after, or for some of you still during the summer break in 2025. And it will be Bohan speaking in a moment about exploring trustworthy foundation models. This webinar is organized by the International Neural Network Society. You see there the barcode and the link to read a bit more about our society. And as our previous webinars, this one will also be recorded and then available in our YouTube channel, where you can see the link, but you can also find it via the website. We will speak about foundation models, and I guess most of you are, of course, aware of this rapid increase of size in foundation models, and they're useful for solving main models for solving several different tasks as a base. But these foundation models have some problems with the huge amount of data and real-world conditions. We don't always have this great lab data. So they need to work in environments where you have noisy data. I personally work in camera captured images, and I realized that they are not as good as scans, for example. And of course, users can give arbitrary, sometimes even unexpected inputs. Will they still work, or at least don't produce something which would be unethically? So rigorous benchmarking is important to identify, are they trustworthy? Are they really applicable in real environments? And do we have safe models? So maybe some fine-tuning is possible. And finally, the reasoning mechanisms, are they robust enough to work with more complex data scenarios? And an international expert in this area who has been recognized also by INNS is Bohan. Bohan is already a quite well-established researcher, I would say. He has, and that's a really nice academic and industrial experience. He is working in Hong Kong at RIKEN. He was at Microsoft and Alibaba. But his scientific contributions led then to really great awards. One of them, outstanding award, is his most influential paper at NeurIPS. And he was listed in an IEEE top 10 AIs to watch award. And finally, last year, shouldn't say finally, but most importantly from INNS, it's that he received this Young Investigator Award in 2024, which he said he is very proud of. And he is very proud of all of these and many, many other awards which he received. But when I asked him, he also said that these awards are not only his own work, but they are thanks to great team efforts. And these team efforts, they are his collaborators, but also students. And this maintaining contact with current and of course also previous PhD students is very useful to become successful. So I'm very much excited to hear about you and your collaborations leading to this great work. Please, Bohan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Professor Marcus, for your very nice introduction, and thanks, Ms. Keller. This is very nice intro to the whole community. And it is my great honor and today to give the talk here. So let me share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen?
All is visible, all is perfect. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So today, I will present trustworthy foundation model from three aspects, from benchmarking, fine-tuning, and learning. So I'm Bo, and I've come from HKBU and the lead group there. I lead a trustworthy machine learning research group. And also I'm the adjunct scientist in the RIKEN IP working with Professor Masashi Sugiyama. So today I will discuss the three-line research from benchmarking, fine-tuning, and learning. Actually, this is already covered by the Professor Marcus briefly. So I will discuss some technical details in three lines. For the benchmarking, we discuss something about the vision language model, how to benchmark a vision language model fairly. Okay, so we try to summarize a new data set called CounterAnimal. We will discuss later. And for the fine-tuning, we try to analyze the dynamics of a large language model. Actually, the large language model unlearn is a really critical, but a really hard problem here. And for the reasoning here, I want to mention that we discuss something like passive reasoning. We discuss the reasoning over the noisy rationale. But now I should carefully discuss the reasoning now already enter into the active reasoning. We explore this area by the AR bench in this year's SML. We will mention later, okay? So for the first of work, as I mentioned before, the main leading author is my PhD, the Qizhou, and also we are collaborating with a very fantastic researcher, Professor Tong Zhang and Professor Ludwig Smith. And the benchmarking actually is really important and really critical to actually evaluate the current models. So we're gathering the reliable evaluation data and we conduct the proper metric evaluation. So for the traditional machine learning pipeline, we collected the training data, we train the model, and then we evaluate the model on another set of data we call the evaluation data, right? So basically, in this kind of training and evaluation data, we definitely have a data distribution shift. So training and evaluation data have a distribution shift, which will reflect the problem called the OD generalization. For example, if you train over the ImageNet, but you test it over the like ImageNet V2, ImageNet radiation, definitely you will get a different performance gap, right? So based on this kind of phenomenon, so the OpenAI proposed their very strong model called CLIP. So they leverage the cross-model supervision to enhance model robustness, right? For example, if you compare with supervised training, basically if you train over like ImageNet V2, but you test it like ImageNet A or ImageNet radiation, you will definitely observe that the CLIP robustness is very strong, right? Compared with supervised training. So there is a very strong belief previously, like CLIP is more robust to the distribution shift than the conventional supervised training. This is almost the common sense in this area or in this field. But we doubt this kind of a common belief. Is conclusion is correct? So we think about the OD data sets they use to evaluate the model actually are crafted for the distribution shift only within the ImageNet setup, actually, which are not valid for the CLIP map models. So we think about the problem from two issues. The one issue is called the data contamination. Another issue, we call it the bias superiorness. So especially for the bias superiorness means a feature may mislead the ImageNet trained models, which may not mislead the CLIP model necessarily, right? So based on this kind of problem or issue, so we think about the ImageNet OD dataset cannot reflect OD generalization for the CLIP setup. So we need to build up a new setup or new datasets. We call the CounterAnimals. So the CounterAnimal actually is a new benchmark. So the CounterAnimal benchmark datasets, we care about the two issues. The first issue is called superiorness. And the second issue, we care about the generality. So the superiorness, we considering about the background change as a potential superior features. For example, let's we show from eye spare. So normally in our common sense, eye spare will land in the eyes, right? Definitely. But the eye spare in the summer, so eye spare will land in the grass. So when we vary in the different background, actually we share the basic assumption that the eye spare are commonly appear with eyes rather than the grass background. So the CLIP may rely on the eyes-related superior features. So based on this very basic assumption, once we change a different background, actually will represent the impact of different superior features. So which is a very typical distribution shift, right? So based on this basic assumption, we collect the data. We want to evaluate the model, especially the CLIP series like Lava or even LADA, okay? So fairly in the different scenario. So we have a 4 step. In the first step, we do the data collection. So we crawl the raw data from iNaturalist. This is the data. This is a website for the different animals. We query and crawl different animals' photos given the name. For the second step, we do the data curation. So there's raw data are very susceptible to the noise and ambiguity, which should be the cleanish manually. For example, we will remove a lot of noise, we will remove a lot of occlusion and obscurity. And then in the third step, we need relabeling the data. We relabeling data, the main object and the background. For example, if we relabeling the data like a main object like ice bear and with a different background like a snow or grass. And eventually we will discover the superior features or superior issues. So the different pair of background where the clip shows a very high performance drop actually are observed. So for this kind of data sets, normally we describe the data like common and uncommon. For the common one means ice bear normally in our common sense in the snow background. But for the uncommon one, it means ice bear normally in the grass background or other different background, right? So the models like clip models will describe or will find the different performance drop, right? So compare with uncommon one, normally the common on the common data sets, the model robustness is really high. But compare with common one, when the model evaluate over the uncommon data sets, so normally they show some very big performance drop, right? So there's a very big performance drop between the common and uncommon, which indicates the robustness of the evaluated model. So we share here, okay. So basically we collect the 45 class of animal with 7,000 common and 6,000 uncommon example. So we can share the performance drop here. So we can say we change different backbone like from like a Vich to the very big Vich, okay? And we change different data sets from OpenAI line 400 millions and to the data comp. And also we compare with different scale of large vision language model like a Clip line 400 and also like a Clip OpenAI. So we can say, okay, the performance share the performance drop between the common and common. But when we enlarge the data, when we enlarge the model size, the drop become a shrink, right? The performance drop becomes shrink. Okay, so we share some like a very interesting observation. So for the first observation, so compare with clip model, so ImageNet model may not suffer for the performance drop too much, right? So the reason actually is the CounterAnimal will capture the superiorness within the clip. That's proper for assessing the clip instead of the ImageNet models. And the second observation here is Lava and the Mini GPT-4, very large scale. The models will show very stronger robustness with lower performance than the clips. So means when we leverage the more advanced vision language model built upon the clip are still affected by the superiorness within the CounterAnimal, but they don't suffer too much, right? So when we leverage the very large models, which show very strong robustness. And also we following the scoring law, okay. So basically we share some observation, okay. So one observation when we scale up the model size actually can enhance the clip robustness. You can say when we change the model size become too large, okay. There's share some larger slope which indicates a very better robustness, okay, here. But there's also one very strong phenomenon. Okay, so basically, when we enlarge the data size, we can share the performance increase. But here you can say when we scale up the data size, especially for the pre-trained data size, okay. So you can say when we scaling up the data size, actually cannot enhance the clip robustness. They share the similar slope, which indicates a similar robustness, right? But we also find a very interesting observation that when we improve the data quality, actually the data quality improvement can really enhance the clip robustness. So the larger slope in the data quality will indicate the better robustness here. So from raw data to high quality data, okay, we can share the better robustness. Okay, and also we make some theoretical understanding to justify why the model, why the superiorness means a lot. So when we do some assumption based on the multimodal data sets, so the data set is actually the bias towards the superior features. Okay, so the model decision will rely on actually to make a right prediction based on such kind of superior features. Okay. So here we make some take-home message for the first line for the benchmarking. So we should be we should be cautious about the test setup when we assess the new training setup. So we propose our CounterAnimals data sets. Actually, this is the data sets we already upload to the GitHub and Hugging Face. And this data set is a proper benchmark for assessing the robustness of a clip to the superior features. And also the distribution shift remain an open question for the clip and the other vision language model. When we scale up the model size actually can enhance the robustness, while scaling up the pre-trained data is not so effective. And when we improve the data quality actually is effective to enhance the robustness. Okay, so this is the first part for the benchmarking, especially for the vision language model. So any question and feel free to interrupt me. Otherwise, I will push forward and then we have a QA later. Okay, so let me push forward. So for the second part, we do some like a fine tuning, and still the fine tuning work is joint work with Professor Kilian Wimberger and also the joined by my PhD Qizhou Zhan Ke, and also collaborate with Jin Peng. And also the fine-tuning actually is aimed to adapt the model parameters to fit task or knowledge where the specific goal can be attributed to the learning and unlearn, right? So basically learn from my ideas for especially for the neural network means enhance some parameters weights, but for the unlearn means we erase the wrong or bad knowledge, especially to erase the connection between the neuron, right? So for this kind of idea, so actually this is already well established and there's strong motivation here. So normally the data subjected to the rights to obtain from the controller to erase the personal data, especially for example in the Euro, we have like a GDPR regulation. A consumer shall have the right to request that a business delete any personal information about the consumer, right? So normally there's multiple channels, multiple way to do the similar function, for example, like factor learning or different privacy. But the machine learning is also one of the very important tool or technique in this area. So for the large language model unlearning, this is also a very hot topic. For the traditional one, actually, we share the bi-objective goal, right? So we have an unlearn goal and we have a retention goal. The unlearn goal means we remove the model capability to generate target data. For the retention goal means we maintain the performance on other non-target data. So we share some like a gradient ascent method. So this is a very basic method. We call it the gradient ascent based method. For the unlearn objective, actually if the negative log likelihood actually is a proper objective for the learning, then the log likelihood should be proper for the unlearn, right? So basically, based on this kind of assumption, we have like a bi-objective. This is already exist. We call it the gradient ascent based method. So the impact of the gradient ascent like this. So normally the negative log likelihood as a performance metric to assess the performance. So basically we can say okay, the large unlearns likelihood indicate very strong unlearn, but you can say we still share some like large retain actually the likelihood indicates there's a damage in the retention part. So the observation one is for the J-based method actually can achieve very strong learn, but cannot ensure the reliable retention that not meeting the previously due objective goal, right? So based on this, we should deep deeper, okay, the depth deeper, right? So the performance metric offer the limited insight towards a deeper understanding. There's some limitation here. We can say we cannot disentangle the impact of the two different objective on the model performance, right? So even the both objective can have an impact on in the intervened manners together, right? The different objective will intervene together, and we cannot discover which factor will contribute the final results. And also, even we can falsely disentangle, we cannot fully understand which factor lead to the observed behavior, right? So basically, the unlearn with the two intervened objective, we cannot do these similar things, right? So based on this kind of limitation, so we discover from like a gradient view. So normally in the trustworthy problem, we have a different gradient manipulation. For example, like gradient clipping or the grid with a different. For example, for learning with label noise, we just clip the gradients, right? So it can enhance the robustness over the deep neural network. But for the large language model here, so we don't clip the gradients. We just manipulate the angle between the different gradients, right? So we're studying the impact of unlearned methods on the performance metric from a gradient view. So normally we have like unlearned gradients and we have a retention gradients. So basically we should keep sure that the angle between the two gradients within the 90 degree. So within the 90 degrees, they can both enhance. But when the two gradients mutual orthogonal, so they don't have any effect, they don't have any affection, but above the 90 degrees, they can damage each other. So we need to fulfill the two goals. The first goal is J effect can be computed separately, okay, for the on target data and the target data for the unlearn and the retention. And for the fulfill goal 2 is a gradient provide much more message than mirrors cross entropy performance, okay. So based on this, we share one example. For we have like a retention J effect, and also we can calculate the unlearned J effect. So normally we should keep sure the positive J effect is preferred to enhance the retention, and a negatively retention is preferred for the strong learn for here. So for the retention, we leverage the blue one as a J effect, and for the unlearn one, we leverage the red one actually. So for the retention part, we means the blue one means we need a positively gradient is preferred to enhance the retention. But for the unlearn part, we need the negatively value here. So as smaller as possible for the strong learn. Okay. So basically, when we check the previously the JA based method here, you can say here, we can say the red one here is not achieve our target. We hope as smaller as possible means very negatively EU is preferred, right? But for the positive one, the retention part, the blue here, so normally this is already very small one, but we hope it can become a very large one, a very positive one, right? So the J effect will quantify the rate of a change in the performance. Actually, it can be calculated separately for the retention and unlearn, right? So based on this kind of motivation, we can say, okay, the traditional JA-based method, we can say we can observe the excessive extent of removal, actually which incurs a negative cost to the retention. So the reason here is the inverse likelihood wrongly focus more on the sufficiently unlearned tokens, which will lead to the over unlearn that negatively impact model utility. So we can say, okay, the red one here is not as small as possible, but the blue one here is for the retention is as small as possible. So we need to do something. We need to do some manipulation for the weight here. So based on this kind of motivation, we also check the different layer of large language model. So we can say the unlearning will affect on the bottom layer of a large language model more than the others. So the reason here is the large gradient will accumulate due to the chain rule. So a general scenario will hold for many other unlearned objectives. Okay. So based on these kind of things, and we make sure that we leverage the weighted loss reweighting. Actually, loss reweighting is not very new, right? So normally we leverage the similar techniques in the learning with label noise. We do some reweighting skill, but here we just reweighting the inverse likelihood here. So basically, you can say after we make the weighted gradient ascent measures, we can change the original GA-based method to the weighted GA. So you can say our target can be fulfilled to some degree, right? So basically, the red one here become as small as possible, but the blue one here is a shrink, right? So normally for the optimal case, normally the blue one should be the positive, but here is already shrink. So we achieve to some degree, we achieve our target. Okay. And also for another showcase for the observation, we call the negative preference optimization. This is also a very popular measure in this area. So the NPU has a fewer negative impacts on the retention compared with the original GA. So the reason actually here is the gradient NPU are very similar, but we reweighting by the WNPU already, which may contribute its improvement over the original GA, but we need make sure that the NPU can be improved further. Okay. And how to do it? We also observe that NPU weighted serve as a role as early stopping. There's some reason like WNPU approach zero when the probability towards zero after several steps. So based on the observation, we leverage the new one, we call it token-wise NPU. So the token-wise NPU means token-wise reweighting skill, right? So basically, we leverage the new parameters here. So say the similar or the almost the same the reweighting scheme, but here we apply the from like a point-wise to the token-wise. So we can change the original NPU to the token-wise NPU. We can say, okay, the right one here is a skill already become very large, right? So normally it's as small as possible, from a -90 to the -300. But for the blue one here is like a retention scale. Normally we almost shrink as small as possible towards the positive value. But then eventually we don't towards like a positive, but actually we already approach to that scale, right? So basically based on this, the TNPO is much better than the original NPO. Okay. So based on this, we also justify from a retention part compare with the likelihood to the KL divergence. Actually, we make some observation. The likelihood and the KL divergence are both effective for the retention. Well, the KL actually can lead to overall larger retention J effect. Therefore, in reality, we will leverage the KL. Okay. So the unlearned J effect actually is much larger than for the retention objective. So we don't need to actually worry about too much, okay, for the set effects on the unlearned part. And also we do quite a lot of evaluation for the different data sets. Actually, we have several observations, okay. So the one observation is a larger unlearned data sets and the smaller model sets make a more challenge. And also the GA-based works are much better than the other lines of work like PO and RMU for the unlearning part. And also the token-wise or instant-wise rating is very promising for the unlearned efficacy, okay. And here we also summarize some take-home message. So one information we want to summarize is the general knowledge within the shallow layer undergo the substantial alteration. And also we prioritizing some tokens is very effective for the unlearn. And also the deterioration in the common model's response can outweigh the improvement in the unlearning part. Okay. So this is for the second part for the large language model unlearn. Okay. And for the third part, for the learning part, actually, I should claim that for the learning here, we only summarize very preliminary reasoning part. It's like we call it the passive reasoning. But now we already enter another way we call the active reasoning, is more interact with human. Okay, so basically for the passive reasoning, normally we discuss something called the noisy rationale, noisy question. So at that time, this is we discuss some idea for the how to interact in the imperfect environments. So because I have a background for the deep learning with the label noise, so at that time we do quite a lot of labeling from like cross-sourcing environments. But for the in the large language model age, basically we do something called the noisy rationale, noisy question. Okay. So we find the scenario for the large language model, especially called the chain of thought prompting. Okay, and this is work. This is joint work with my two PhD, Zhang Ke and Jianing, and also the lead by the Zhang Ke. And for this kind of scenario, so basically for the large language model, if you ask the same question like in base 9, what is 86 plus 57? So we give some like hints here, like we know 6 plus 6 equal to 12, but actually we give the question in base 10. But our question we want to ask is in the base 9. So it will mislead the large language model to give you the wrong answer, right? And also for the noisy rationale means definitely we give some hints information. Also, we provide the hints in the base 10, okay? So basically, it also mislead the question, okay? And let me summarize some background, some brief background here. So the learning actually is a pathway to achieve the powerful intelligence. So in the high level idea means we decompose a very complex model into the feasible step, and then we get an easy answer, and then we combine the knowledge piece into the new knowledge. So the way we make here means a chain of thought, right? So normally we generating the chain of thought is very key for the learning models. Even today, we already have like a DeepSeek R1, OpenAI O3. So basically, I think the chain of thought, the COT, or even different variants like a TOT and like different variants is also very important for the whole fields. Okay, so based on this kind of background. So the chain of thought means normally, okay, so the in-context learning actually is widely used, right? So in context, we call the ICL, enable language model to learn from a few example, okay? The chain of thought means we can include much rationale, sequential learning thought to solve a question, right? So based on this kind of large language model reasoning, at that time, I should say at that time, we find some scenario with a noisy rationale. So previously the existing work generally assumed that the chain of thought contains a very clean or super clean rationale. But because I have a background in the imperfect data, so we think about how we can make sure that the COT contains the noisy rationale. So the noisy rationale in our context include the invariant, irrelevant, and or the inaccurate source. So basically, the irrelevant in the base 10 information can be included, but our question is in the base 9, right? So for example, if you ask a question in the base 9, what is 86 plus 57, but you give the rationale for the base 10 information. Actually, this is inaccurate thought here, right? So we have actually in our daily life, we have quite a lot of a challenge in to handling such kind of a noisy rationale. For example, the noisy rationale originate from a diverse source like cross-source platform, dialogue system, and AI generated data. For example, in our daily training, okay, all the data like from for example, if we leverage like a big model like OpenAI's ChatGPT, also like DeepSeek models, right? So basically, they crowd data from web and also they crowd data from everywhere, like cross-sourcing platform, dialogue system, or even the like AI generated data. So we cannot control the data quality here. So normally we have quite a lot of noisy rationale. And also the OpenAI will have like quite a lot of data from everywhere, and also like a different data source. So the robustness of a large language model will against the noise rationale is still unknown. So a new data set actually is needed to conduct a systematic evaluation of the current large language model at that time. I should say, because this paper is published in 2024, at the end of 2024, the NeurIPS. And this field, the whole field is fast pacing for this area, right? At that time, we need a new data set to evaluate the large language model. So we want to verify the corresponding countermeasure against noisy rationale. So we built a new benchmark that we call the NoRa. So NoRa is a new benchmark to evaluate the robustness against noisy rationale. So NoRa contains 20,000 questions covering the three tasks, like from math, symbolic, or common sense. Okay, so we manually crafted the source here. So here, the noisy source we will labeling in the red color, and the clean source we will labeling in the black color, right? So we gave the definition. So for the irrelevant source means irrelevant for the given context. For example, when we're discussing the genetic overlap of siblings when reasoning the family roles. And the inaccurate source means a factual error in the given context. Means, for example, like 5 plus 5 equal to 10 is wrong in the base net calculation, right? So we're gathering the noisy rationale by inserting with a different ratio by inserting the irrelevant or inaccurate source. We guarantee the overall correctness without modifying the question or the answer. And also we control the noisy ratio with a different value like 3, 3%, 30%, 50%, or 80% with a different value from easy to the hard, right? So basically, we evaluate the different evaluation with a NoRa dataset. So we have a gradient observation. You can say, no matter we change a different ratio, normally we will suffer from like 25% of accuracy decrease with irrelevant noise, but almost 50% of accuracy decrease with inaccurate noise. And also compare with, at that time, compare with a different method like a self-correction method, like IC and SP, like intrinsic self-correction, actually perform poorly on the most of the task within the noise rationale. And also without the truly denoising and the self-consistent method can actually improve the robustness here. And also with the different, even we change or we adjust a different model temperature, and we prompting with a more noisy example. And we can say, okay, basically adjusting the model temperature can improve the robustness here. And also the prompting with a more noisy example will boost the learning accuracy on the most of the case. And we do the evaluation fairly over the NoRa datasets. We shuffle the different question, we shuffle the different rationale, and also we shuffle the order of the different answer. Okay, so we can say shuffling the different prompting example will degenerate the reasoning, but still performs better than without the prompting, right? And also the large language model will less vulnerable to shuffle the mappings than the noisy rationale, right? And this is a strong motivation here. So the currently large language model cannot denoise well within their intrinsic denoising ability. But after 2024, when we enter into the 2025, okay, basically the most of the learning model now has very strong the denoising robustness. But we will disclose one very big issue later, okay? Another time, there's no models can denoise very well. So even enhance with a self-correction, a self-consistent method. So the motivation at that time is we want to propose external supervision actually. So we need to provide a clean chain of thought demonstration. Okay. So we provide a very clean demonstration can be the minimum of requirement to do the denoise. Okay, so the key idea is here. So the self-denoising, when we leverage the contrastive method, when we leverage the within the noise data, when we directly leverage the self-denoising, we can provide even the wrong denoising or the unidentified denoise. So it's really hard for the large language model to denoise without any guidance. So the key idea is that we leverage the contrastive denoising. It's very easier for the large language model to denoise by contrastive noise and clean, like a demonstration here. So we try to promote and provide the prompt clean data here, and to leverage this kind of prompt clean data to compare with the original noise data, right? When we leverage the contrastive denoising, we can correct the denoising here and to make sure all the data become clean data. So in ideal case, we propose the contrastive denoising with a noisy chain of thought. We call the CDCOT method. But here, I should mention that there's still the limitation. The limitation here is the CDCOT methodology cannot scale up very well, because once we have like quite a lot of noise rationale, it's very hard and very time consuming here. But for the one like middle size of a noise rationale, it's still very good. So when we're rephrasing and selecting the rationale in the input space to conduct the explicit denoising, and then we exploring the diverse reasoning paths and voting on the answer in the output space. So here we should summarize the CDCOT for the 4 step. For the first 2 steps, the first step means we rephrase the noisy rationale, while the contrastive denoise means every single noisy example, we will compare it with a clean example. And we rephrase the noisy rationale, and then we rephrase the answer, and then we compare. So we only select the rephrase example with the same answer with a clean example, right? So basically, when we rephrase it and we select the clean one, and then we select it. And after we select it and we fully utilize the rephrase example with the deliberate reasoning, and eventually we vote all the answer equally to get a final answer. So based on this kind of CDCOT, we summarize it to the CDCOT measures, and we get a 4 step. And we evaluate the CDCOT measures over the different different mass, like even the base 9, base 11, and the symbolic and the common sense with different data sets. And we can say, okay, we can have some like grandy observation. The CDCOT actually can improve the performance, especially the robust performance, compared with the base model under the different noisy setting. And also the CDCOT display a very remarkable resistance to the different magnitude of noise, right? Even in the very challenging mathematical task. And also the CDCOT generalized very well across a different large language model like a GPT 3.5 and the Gemini Pro and the Llama 2 at that time. But now, actually, I should say, okay, the reasoning model can have very strong the denoising robustness. Okay, I will mention later. Okay, and at that time, there's still a performance gain over the different like large language model. And here we should visualize the CDCOT measure. Okay, you can see compare with different reasoning models like reasoning measure like SMSDSP. You can see if we give the original noise rationale here and SMSDSP, you can see there's still like wrong information here, irrelevant or inaccurate rationale. But our CDCOT can do the noise. We can effectively remove the noise sort and ensure the format alignments within the original rationale here. So there's still some take-home message. So we investigate for the NoRa datasets. We investigate the underexplored problem of a noisy rationale, and we propose the NoRa datasets and also be uploaded to the Hugging Face and GitHub to evaluate the quite different large language model against the noisy rationale. and we review the vulnerability of large language model to the noise rationale. And we designed the first generation method called the CTCOT method to enhance the robustness. But I should mention that after 2025, quite a lot of very strong reasoning model can improve the robustness over our NoRa we tested. But also I want to disclose one issue here we will discuss, okay? So we discuss quite a different direction for the foundation model. Actually, I should mention that this is still the very preliminary study, and this area is a fast pacing, right? And we should mention that we have some idea for the future directions. So the first one for the benchmarking one, actually, we only propose the very early data sets called CounterAnimals. And we still think about how to design the new algorithm for like a robust pre-train and fine-tuning methodology, actually for the very new models in this area like Lava or Lada. So still the very language model be misled by the superior features. So normally we give the some like a golden rule, like a larger model and a high quality data can lead to better robustness, but we don't propose some like a new method. So we hope that researcher can explore this area, can propose some like a general form of methodology, can train the very language model in the robust way. Okay. And also for the second line of research, I should say there's still very strong trade-off between the unlearn and the retention. So the currently unlearn objective have very negative impact on the retention, and the data and the optimization aspect of unlearn are not well explored. So there's much room for the researcher working in this area. And again, the reasoning with noise rationale can be further investigated. I should say, for the original non-reasoning models like GPT 3.5, GPT-4, it's not very robust over our NoRa dataset. But for the reasoning model like R1, O1, O3, like deep thinking, okay, they generally much more robust. But they suffer from one issue is that they will exhibit the overthinking issue, means their thinking queue is too long and they need much more time. How to make sure the efficient reasoning is still should be explored over the NoRa datasets. And one more point is actually all the work in my talk, we have like a survey and also the book to support, especially for the new book called the Trustworthy Machine Learning. This is joint book with Jiang Chao, Tongliang, Bo, and Semi and Feng. And this is fully open source and online. You can download from my website. And also I contribute the most of the efforts for the three work from my PhD student and my collaborator, Professor Tong Zhang and Professor Kilian Wimberger, and also Professor Ludwig Smith. And thanks for your listening. And any question for my talk?
Thank you so much, Bo. We have time for questions, and Bo also has agreed to be a bit around after we stop the recording. So if someone has a question, just raise your hand or directly share your camera that we can see that you have a question. Meanwhile, typically people are hesitating asking the first question. I really liked your presentation and all of the contributions you're giving. And yeah, I'm interested in this research also a bit by myself. But I have maybe a bit more general question. These unlearning methods which you presented, there's some general mechanisms. But I was wondering, are they totally agnostic to the machine learning methods used, or are they kind of dependent on that? There have been, for example, these XLSTM being presented by Sepp Hochreiter now in the recent IJCNN in Rome. And I was wondering if the unlearning mechanisms work the same well on these kind of algorithms, or if they are kind of correlated to the machine learning methods used.
Yes, I agree. This is a very Professor Marcus provide a very good view, a very good point to From my view, is actually the unlearn is not new things. For the traditional machine learning models like a deep neural network or even some not very deep models, they still have an unlearn problem. But for the large language model, they suffer more because they have a much more model capacity. So once you already just like memory some information for knowledge, it's very hard for remove it, right? So definitely. So how to make sure that your large language, for example, if you want forcefully to remove all knowledge means you will suffer from a deterioration for the performance drop. Definitely, they have like a very, there's definitely a trade-off between unlearning and retention. So from my understanding is for the shallow or from like simple models, definitely the trade-off is not very obvious. But for the deep model, like very high layer, very deep layer, or very large capacity of model, large language model, they suffer more for this kind of issue. So in this case, we need to do some like a general algorithm design to make sure that to balance like our token-wise idea, like token-wise NPU. But also we need to design some like model-specific unlearn methodology. For example, which model capacity we need to design something, and we should carefully to think about this. But this is still the open question from my view. So you can say from a data view, from optimization dynamics view, they're still not well explored. So we need to think about this. Or even from architecture view, how to make sure the unlearn to maintain the unlearn and the retention is still the problem. It is still the new direction for us. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I think these are really nice insights. Just to mention, these XLSTM are not so shallow either, but
Yeah, it's not very
so
shallow. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
but
still, I think from a different view, like how to do the specific, like architecture specific instead of architecture agnostic. I
yeah.
think this is my own view. Yeah. Because we currently we leverage large language model basically based on the transformer based structure. Yeah.
Exactly. Is there any other question? I had a small follow-up while you gave your explanation, but maybe really I'm just curious, do you do some research understanding if the model pretends to unlearn, but actually has the information inside and kind of when some safeguards are switched off and so on, reveals that the information is still inside?
Yeah, this is actually I don't directly to work on this area, but this seems like some like a deep inception. One of my another work. So that work is I should promote a bit because at that time, okay, we hack the large language model by tell the like we give some like template like science fiction and to make the wrong things or adversarial information within the science fiction and the scenario. Then we want to decide the models to do this and to give us some output, some like wrong information or the bad information. So this is, I think, a very similar thing. But from yeah, we the idea, the key things that we want to alert the large language model or the company that you should definitely to do something to protect your model. This is an area called jailbreak. I think is a little bit connected with the proposal, but
Hmm.
we don't directly do the idea like a decisive like like a model to do something like this. Yeah.
Thank you. Now a question from Jake
Yeah.
appears.
Jake.
And Jake, if you want, you please also share your camera, but there is no need. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, thanks for the great presentation, Bo. I have a kind of quick question to kind of hear your thoughts and opinion about, because there is some skepticism about the machine learning. It's still, even after the unlearning, still is vulnerable to the model inversion attack or the membership attack. So what do you think about that? Do you think is this because of any weakness of the unlearning method, or unlearning itself is not that effective?
Yes, I agree with actually. I myself, I decide myself as a machine learning researcher But I respect quite a lot of statistician, and I think from when I was a PhD student, I read a lot of like a membership in like some membership in attack or something like this. So from my view is like a statistician will design some method with a theoretical guarantee, and they can explain very well. And but for the machine learning people, when they do the research over the large language model unlearn, they will care more about the empirical study or the empirical phenomenon. So from my view is if we can combine the two part, for example, I think like quite a lot of professors in the US try to combine the theoretical justification with the empirical study together, and they can design the new algorithm and with explanation. But normally, from our own experience, normally the reality is actually something is very hard to explain. Maybe some like a trick, for example, like a reweighting trick can boost the performance. But this part is, I think, we can. There's not too much room. We can design some like theoretical justification for this. So from my idea is, I think we should combine and we should explore. But it's still very hard for us to do this. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but I respect a lot. I think even today, I think Professor Song Mei and also another professor write a paper for the in the large language model age how to view the statistician and something that they already archive in the websites. I think it's a very nice paper. Yeah.
Yeah, I see. Because given the skepticism, what I was thinking is, what if we just instead of unlearning, because there's some theoretical support with the differential privacy.
Yeah.
So
DP.
yeah, apply the DP with some budget on the data, maybe
Yeah.
more private than unlearning. So
Yeah, I agree. I agree with this. And also the DP methods is already well explored, and also this
that's right.
area is too. And I think from my understanding, like it seems like some company in the US also deploy some like DP method in their product line to protect the different privacy, like privacy issue. And the unlearn is also the promising. And from my because I have some interaction with some company, and unlearn also is a very promising in the product in their product line. So, but I think this belong to the different channel towards the final target. Eventually, we want to provide a channel to provide to protect the user or customers' privacy. Yeah, this is still different channel for us. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree that this is the explored area that need a lot of room for improvement. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jake.
Please, Prakash, go ahead.
Yeah, nice lecture. Quite many insights.
Yeah,
So I have a very small question
Sure.
regarding the unlearning that because all this foundation model has very much a general purpose capability, which
Yeah.
could be translated into different downstreaming tasks or transfer knowledge. So while we thinking about the unlearning, there could be more than one objective to achieve during it could be privacy, it could be many other factors. So and when you particularly focus that we should also focus on the data and optimization side. So could you give a bit of an insight that if I have multiple objectives for the unlearning, how and what kind of like optimization process should be investigated?
Yeah,
Because
this is also, I think the thinking. This is a very good question, because normally you can say in my assumption for the J-based method, we only have like two objective, right? This is like a by objective, like we just care for one unlearn, one retention. But if we have a multiple unlearn, right? So basically this is very hard to, because we have like quite a different like data source, and it's very hard to balance. So in this case, I think the optimization perspective maybe is not a very good way to explore. From my view, is like how we can control the like using the data fusion we make the data fusion to the one data, and but to control the quality and to make sure that unlearn based on only one majority of the objective. This is really important for me because this is the one is very easy to control, but once we have like this distributed, it's very hard to control, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
this is
maybe
my
just a
thought.
small follow-up that if we're not going towards like a multiple objective aspect, if you want to comment on if we want to make it incremental unlearning, like one objective, then another objective, then
Yeah.
do you think it
Yeah,
should
this is
be like
also
viable?
the way. Yeah, I agree with this. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Martin, you also have a question?
Yes, thank you. Hi, Bo.
Hi,
Really
Martin.
I really enjoyed your presentation. I do quite a bit of work in uncertainty, epistemic, aleatoric evaluation, model predictions. Have you, or is this something that can be incorporated into your work as well?
You mean for the uncertainty evaluation, right?
Yeah, more kind of in a Bayesian approximation context.
Yeah. Actually, I fully agree. So normally because I previously I'm also the Bayesian guy. So when I was a PhD student, I work with Mingyuan, and at that time we do quite a lot of Bayesian. And but the problem is, after I think after when I joined my career as assistant professor, I suddenly sent a very big change because normally when the data sets scale up, right, quite a lot of things, the prior information is very hard to give. It's very hard to estimate the prior. So at that time, we try to observe what phenomenon we will say. So for the question, for example, for the first one, we only make sure that the data sets we collect is fair, and to change only one single factors and to evaluate the whole model. So that's why we do this, but we don't consider about like confidence, like how much confidence we will make sure this kind of image or that kind of image. So we don't directly consider the things you propose, but we only observe the grand observation, for example, like with a different change of background, and obviously with different change of background, how much decrease. We don't do the fine tune over the with some prior information over the data sets. We don't consider this before, but I think it is a good idea to even fine tune based on some like prior information, or even some like give some confidence over that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, very interesting. And causal theory is not an area I'm in as well, but changing your background,
Yeah.
I'm thinking it might be a connection there as well. Anyway, wonderful talk. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Martin.
Well, I had another question in a different
Sure.
area. Can I challenge you a bit, or
Yeah, definitely,
it's
no problem. Sure.
but maybe you're tired of this discussion. But here
No
in Sweden,
problem. I really enjoy it.
yeah, here in Sweden, we are quite often discussing about these terms like agentic AI and reasoning machine learning. And you now also, of course, it's quite common to use it in Europe's scope and so on, this term reasoning. But when thinking of reasoning, there's a long history in reasoning system, and many systems are more based on symbolic AI with induction and so on. And there was also, I'm not sure if you heard about this Apple report, came rather recently this summer, the illusion of thinking. But Sami, when you hinted to that
Yeah,
also.
I noticed
No.
this paper. Yeah.
Yeah. So showing a little bit that, yeah, it works maybe with like the Tower of Hanoi problem with 3, 4, 5, but when you have 20 towers, it doesn't really work, and they don't really think. And while an inductive reasoning or recursive algorithm does it rather well. So my question in this context is a bit, how do you define reasoning? And the second one, then, how far are we from this machine learning real reasoning? Is your approach what you're suggesting the way, or should we combine it with symbolic approaches? What is your general thought on that?
Yeah. Actually, this is a very insightful questions, and you can say from my group name, I built up a group in 2020 when I joined the HKBU, and at that time we called the Trustworthy Learning Group, and after 1 year, I already say Trustworthy Learning and Learning Group. So at that time, there's no large language model, there's no very hot term like learning, but I respect the learning people. The reason actually is from like my background because I also work with some professor for the causality. The causal reasoning is actually the one of the reasoning role, like logic reasoning, causal reasoning is belong to the previous reasoning role, right? So basically, based on this motivation, we suddenly enter into the large language model. So we heard about quite a lot of like chain of thoughts, give some like a knowledge, piece of knowledge to combine. So I think learning is like a more general term. So how you can define it? It belongs to the different research background. Like for the causal people, they think about the causal reasoning like they have like causal graph. Like they can do some like reasoning over the causal graph. But for the large language model, they do some reading like based on like a chain of thought or even go beyond, right? So I think different methods have the different context and the scenario. So based on the different, I think based on the different environments. So this is a very general term. From my view, is learning is a more general term. We cannot directly decide learning belong to what, but actually we should decide to leverage. So which environment we should decide which part of methodology we want to deploy or we want to leverage. So this is my 12 my cents. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing these insights. So some last minute question. It is not, I mean, you gave already a summary of your talk, but maybe still you have a final conclusive message for everyone from this presentation. So
okay. And first of all, thanks Professor Marcus for the very nice introduction and discussion, and also all the attendees for your time. And I think for this kind of a research area like a trustworthy foundation, I leverage very big words, but actually I only do some preliminary study and the preliminary work. So we hope that most of the researcher can work this area because the foundation model have quite a lot of issue and room to improve. So if we can collaborate more together to push forward the frontier of the trustworthy foundation model to make more scientific advancements, and we can make sure that the foundation model can be deployed very well and reliably in the different society. Yeah, thank you.
that was really nice. Thank you so much. I will now
Thank you.
conclude the webinar, but as you said, you will still stay online. Sorry, I just made a wrong click here. Here we go. So thanks again, Bo, for this really, really great webinar. Just to hint to the future, there will be future webinars coming. They are not yet announced on our website, but look at INNS.org. We expect in the next 2-3 weeks, next webinar, hopefully at the same time slot. We still have to arrange with the speakers the exact time slots possible. And this webinar and the others are on our YouTube channel, so you can follow them. Join also INNS.org, the Neural Network Society, where you get updates, and join maybe our next conference. Of course, we still have in memory just roughly a month ago, the NICE event in Rome, where we got together and had really great talks, discussions, plenary sessions, and many parallel workshops, tutorials, and whatsoever. And the next event is already planned. That will be in the Netherlands, again in the end of June, the World Congress on Computational Intelligence. Welcome, save the date already, and consider submitting a paper. There's still a lot of time. Thank you so much for today.